Um, Miss,
Broadcast has been set.
thank you, Miss Martin. It is now 5:09. The time is now 5:09. I would like to call to order the August 23rd, 2022 Policy and Governance Committee meeting. 1.2, welcome and opening remarks from the chair. Good evening. Thank you to everyone for being here. I am Judy Mickens Murray, the chair of the Policy and Governance Committee. I'm an at-large representative on the Board of Education. We will now have introductions of committee members, starting with board members, administration staff, board office staff, and board council.
Good evening. I'm Sonia Williams, the Board of Education Vice Chair, and I represent District 9. My name is Sonia Williams and happy to be here.
Hi, Pamela Boozer Struther, board member for District 3 and member of the committee.
Administration, Ms. Welsh.
Good evening. I'm Robin Wash, the Director of Government Relations, Compliance and Procedures.
Thank you. Joe Day.
Good evening. My name is Joe Day Newsome. I'm the Director of the Board Office. This evening, we have a number of Board Office staff joining the meeting, and I'd like to ask them now to introduce themselves to the group.
Hi, my name is Cindy Ale. I'm the Administrative Secretary to the Board Office.
Good evening. My name is Mia Barton. I am the Administrative Secretary for the Board Office.
Is there anyone else, Ms. Mr. Newsom, that I don't see?
I don't believe so.
Okay, then Mr. Whitley.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dennis Whitley III. I'm with the law firm of Shipley and Horn, and we're counsel for the Board of Education.
Thanks, everyone. 1.3, adoption of the August 23rd and 2022 agenda. May I have a motion to approve the August 23rd, 2022 meeting agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to adopt the August 23rd, 2022 meeting agenda. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Ms. Williams?
Aye.
Thank you. The agenda is approved. We need 3 votes to pass the fail motion. 1.4, approval of committee meeting minutes for June 14, 2022 and July 26, 2022 special meeting minutes. May I have a motion to approve the June 14, 2022 and the July 26, 2022 special meeting minutes?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded to approve the June 14, 2022 minutes and the July 26, 2022 special meeting minutes. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
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 It has, the minutes are approved. Thank you. 2.0, public comment. 2.1 and 2.2. There are no registered public comment speakers this evening. Registered public comment speakers will be live or pre-recorded on video or audio. 3.0, policies for discussion. There are no policies for discussion. 4.0, policies for review or action. All actions taken on policies today are pursuant to Board Policy 9340, Roman numeral 4, paragraph 7D. There are 3 policies for revision. 4.0, Policy 109, Financial Impropriety, Improper Conduct, and Whistleblower Protection. I will now yield the floor to Ms. Welsh to give us an overview of Policy 0109.
Okay, Policy 0109 was originally called fraud, waste, and abuse. But I have changed the name, and I'll explain as we go through the process. The revisions were actually mandated because House Bill 468, which was this Whistleblowers Protections Civil Action Bill, which was passed during the 22 legislative session, required that we go in and include language, either have a policy or include language in a policy that talks about whistleblower protection. So our fraud, waste, and abuse referenced it slightly, but really did not give any specific information. And the changes in this policy really address the specific requirements that were in the House Bill 468, which is now actually the Education Article 6-901. So just to quickly go through them, and then we'll go through the policy very quickly, but just to highlight them. First of all, it does prohibit anyone within the school system to reprise or retaliate against anyone who has had a reasonable good faith belief that they have disclosed information related to suspected financial improprieties or improper conduct. So that's the first one. And then it also said that we have to have an administrative remedial process for employees available to them, to any employee that's subject to a personnel action because they did make a protected disclosure. And so that addresses the administrative remedial process. And then it also eliminates the prerequisite that the employee has to exhaust the administrative remedial process that's set up, that in fact they can actually move forward to and take a civil action. They do not have to exhaust administrative remedies. So, but before they can institute a civil action, they absolutely must put it in writing to the CEO that that's their intention to do so. And then I did make some changes. I did add some language about what we're supposed to do when we do find out there's financial impropriety. There's been a report of financial impropriety or improper conduct. So you want to make it a little bit easier. The beginning, if you're going through this policy, I did update language in the policy statement and the purpose. And then Cindy, you can move it forward to the next line. And that's really just language that sort of addresses what the purpose of this is. I did add definitions of financial impropriety so that we're clear about what that is. And that definition does include fraud, waste, and abuse. So, but it is slightly broader than just fraud, waste, and abuse. And so that's why I incorporated into that. Your the current policy that's up right now does have all these examples of fraud. So, I kept them because I think it's important to know exactly what we're talking about. And then if you go to the next page, Cindy, it also included willful disclosure of confidential or proprietary information to outside parties, and then also altering and falsifying student grades. I also provide definition for improper conduct since we're now addressing that. And then if you move forward, and I'm just hitting on the big ones that are important. Cindy, you can scroll down. Let's see what else. Wait, you're going a little fast. Go back up for 1 second, please. No, okay, then keep going. Oh, protected disclosure. So if you see a reference to protected disclosure, that means a person, they made a disclosure and it's based on a reasonable belief and a good faith belief that someone has committed a impropriety, financial impropriety, or has improper conduct. So that sort of helps clarify what we're talking about. And now if you can scroll down to the next page, Cindy. And then it also explains specifically what who the whistleblower is. And it specifically says anyone who makes a protected disclosure based on a reasonable belief that the board or an employee has engaged in an activity or practice that evidences an abuse or authority, mismanagement, or substantial waste of money, a substantial or specific danger to public health or safety, or a violation of a law, rule, or administrative procedure. And that comes straight out of the law. So then you go into the standards, and you can keep scrolling down, Cindy. And this just go up just one step, okay? This is again just repeating that it's a violation of of our policy for anyone doing business with the system or anyone working for the system or for board members to engage in improper conduct or financial impropriety. And then it also goes on to say our standard is that we're prohibiting reprisal or retaliation action against anyone who has done a protected disclosure. Then if you go to the next page, Cindy, and this is where I sort of added a little bit more because I thought it might be helpful. So when we're talking about what happens if someone does make a report and says, I think there was either a financial impropriety or improper conduct, I have, first of all, I listed prevention efforts. So that, which I think are important. So administrators and supervisors, they're aware of what the area that they're supervising or responsible. They should be aware of a potential for any types of financial impropriety or improper conduct that might occur in their respective areas of responsibility. So that's one thing. And then they should also perform consistent management oversight and hold their employees accountable for the performance on the job. Then the next thing goes into investigation. So if we do get a disclosure, then what the steps are in terms of reporting to the immediate supervisor and the immediate supervisor following the appropriate supervisor channels. And that will be laid out more specifically in the administrative procedure. I didn't give any detail to that. And then the consequences, which I think are important, are that there could be disciplinary action. And if we're talking about financial impropriety, it could include restitution. And of course, improper conduct and financial impropriety could also include termination. And then also, depending if it is something that's like really rises to a level that we need to take civil or criminal actions, that we would actually go ahead and file charges in that area. And then the last section does talk about the whistleblower protection. So if you could scroll down just a little bit, Cindy. And it just explains, it talks about the fact that we can't take any personnel action that's a reprisal against anyone because they have disclosed or information, or they threaten to disclose information, or they provide information or testify even in a public body, or when an investigation or a hearing is going on and they give information in that. And then scroll to the next page, please. And then also, if they object or refuse to participate in any activity, policy, or practice which is a violation of the law or any of our policies and procedures. So I think that's sort of, it talks a little bit about, it also gives clarification. So we want to make sure that people do not think, well, we're not going to take action against anyone. I mean, take employment action. This says the action we're taking is in fact, the person actually had a reasonable good faith belief that someone had either was committed a financial impropriety or misconduct. And then it gives a little bit of information about administrative complaint and civil action. So it says, and again, this is related to the law, it says that we will put together an administrative remedial process for the employee who they may want to go down that pathway. They might not want to file a civil action. So that will be available for them. And that process will be completed in 30 days if they decide to file an administrative complaint. And then under civil action, if you scroll down just a little bit further, Cindy, and then it does say that it does explain that before instituting a civil action, the employee must put in writing to the CEO that they plan to do that. And it reinforces that the employee is not required to exhaust any administrative remedies. And I think, and then the last piece has to do with implementation requirements. And if you go to the last page, Cindy, it'll say specifically, of course, that the board directs the CEO to issue an administrative procedure consistent with the policy, and it gives a little bit of direction in what the procedure should include. And that's basically it in a nutshell. So does anyone have any questions?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Welsh. Before we entertain questions, I need colleagues, may I have a motion to forward revised policy 0109, financial impropriety, improper conduct, and whistleblower protection with a recommendation to the full board to seek public comment.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved. It's been moved and seconded that the motion has been moved and seconded. Thank you. Now we can have the discussion. And I see two hands up. Sonia first, board member, the chair acknowledges board member Sonia Williams.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Welsh, for these modifications. I think that it's very in-depth. And so I was just going through them, and as I was looking at them, a number of items sort of popped up, especially when it comes to some of the cases that have come before us as criminal conduct that we've had to sort of, I guess, send outside of our legal responsibility, which I think is great. And one of the things that have popped up a couple of times is when some staff has abused their authority or their access to, their payroll system. And so I like that you've expanded upon that, especially what would happen after it goes beyond a certain level. So the other thing that's popped up is around the some of the board member items, and I like that you've added the Board of Education specifically, because we really need to remind board members that we are employees, but if we have to point it out to say it, say that, mention specifically board members, I think it's great. I have questions or comments that I want to talk about. And one of them is around item number 16, under paragraph 3, definitions, item C. Number 16, willful disclosure of confidential or proprietary information to outside parties. And on occasion, we have that happen from board members. I don't know if it's willful, if it was by mistake, but can you discuss sort of give us a little bit more information around what willful disclosure mean? How would you define that, willful disclosure?
Well, I would say that it's actually intentional in that that was the plan to disclose. I think there are situations where employees don't necessarily, they might disclose something, but they might not recognize that they're doing anything wrong, or they're not recognizing, they should, but they don't recognize that it's confidential. They're just talking, sharing information. But when you know for a fact that, the school system maintains a lot of confidential information also. And then in terms of, for example, even just in terms of personnel records and student records, and we're very clear about the fact that if you have access to that information, you absolutely cannot ever share that information. We even have it in we actually put it in, it has always been in our employee code of conduct, but we expanded on a little bit more this past year because we thought it was so important. So it's really when someone is actually taking intentional action and they know it's wrong, but they're sharing that information.
Right, and so there is, I don't know if this should be a part of the policy here at this point or somewhere else, where some of this and some of the things that you listed here, they actually, and you've done it in some areas, it actually refers or is better defined or have another response in a different policy. So we talk about disclosing confidential information in other policies and what happens if you do it. Do we want to sort of group all of those policies that that have this similar, have a similar, I guess, response. Because we have something here in fraud, waste, and abuse. Can we sort of relate it to another policy? Do we want to give it some direction to say, and it's also discussed, well, you have it in 17 violation of policy 0107, but we also talk about in our board policy that how we deal with getting information out if we want to distribute information, how that occurs. Do we want to pull that in with this one also? Because if we have issues or concerns with items that are with information that we have, we just don't send it out to the public. We're supposed to go through a process on getting that information distributed or shared or getting more information.
So make sure I understand what you're asking. Are you suggesting that we actually reference over to other policies, or that we pull it out and keep it with another policy? I'm not sure I totally
Yeah,
understand.
I just think a reference, and I don't know if
Okay.
at the end of this, at the policy where we sort of we talk about amended to or things like that, or even in reference, do we want to sort of give people direction to other policies that could be similarly related? I think that there is a lot here. We're talking about financial information. We're talking about the whistleblower. There's a lot that we're talking about here, and I think it's good that we have it all compiled here. But some of this information, it relates to other policies that have a different spin on it, but it's the same sort of topic.
I could absolutely list out those policies like at the end as a reference to other policies, as well as we do have, I think, also some administrative procedures that might not be in policy, but they're there that would relate to some of the things listed here. So I could absolutely go through and do that.
Right. And I think it would be great. I saw Mr. Whitley's hand up for a second. I think he wanted to add a comment. Is that okay, Madam Chair?
If it relates to what you're talking about, because Board Member Boozer Struther's hand was up first, and I don't see his hand up. I'm sorry.
Well, he just sort of waved his
Okay.
hand. So.
Okay,
My hand
thank
was up
you.
first. My hand was up for a second, but I'd say let the board member speak first, and then I can ask my question.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Mr. Whitley.
That
So
was
Board
all,
Member,
Madam Chair. That was all.
thank you. Thank you, Board Member Williams. Board Member Boozer, Pamela Boozer Struther.
Yeah, I'm having a bad connection. Can you
You're
hear me?
good. You're good now. Yes. Don't move. Just talk.
Okay, well, let me know if I go out. So
Okay, I will.
I appreciate Board Member Williams' comment, and just makes me think about that, all the employees and board members should really have a moment where they're review this and possibly even sign that they've reviewed it. And I don't know if that's already in procedures for employees, but I just wanted to, I'm looking at section 3D, and there's a reference to exposure of students and or employees to a substantial and specific public health or safety danger. And as everyone knows right now, most people consider that we still have a COVID-19 pandemic, and also think masking should continue. But the public health department might advise Dr. Goldson differently, even though this pandemic is still happening. So I do just want to raise that for our consideration moving forward. And also I have a question specifically for 3C8 on gifts. I know that a lot of organizations give small gifts and logo item gifts to teachers and board members at conferences, events, maybe even on site at school. Is there a understanding of that gift limit? Those are my comments and questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Boozer Struthers. First, Ms. Welsh, do you want to address Board Member Boozer Struthers' concerns?
Yes, I can. I agree that the issue with the masking and the COVID and being, doing the preparation kinds of things that you need to do to not just protect yourself, but to be respectful of others and protect them is an issue. And as you know, we did reinstate the mask, wearing of the mask in the schools again. And I think, but it's even more broader than that. It has to do with even simple things like, a good example is we have a AP that talks about the exterior doors in a school building. And one of the big things in that AP is about making sure you have all your exterior doors closed and you don't prop those doors open. And we know what happened in Texas when there wasn't a door closed, they didn't have the door closed and everything. So all these little things are really serious, important things that we have to be paying attention to. And we do want our employees that if they see someone deliberately opening doors or whatever it might be, or not wearing their mask, whatever, they do need to report these kinds of things. So it is broad because we want that. We want people to have, we really want a culture of compliance where people are paying attention and they're following the rules. Your second question, you asked,
it was C8 gifts, regarding
Yes.
gifts.
So I will say this, for anyone that is, we have a pretty broad group of people that we send financial disclosure forms out each year and require them to turn them in. They're not the in-depth financial disclosure forms that Board of Education members need to complete, but they absolutely are the ones that address a couple things. One is definitely the acceptance of any gifts. And if you accept anything above $20, then you absolutely must fill out another form and it lays out pretty clearly in the form that is unacceptable. We'll say be accepting gifts beyond $20, and they have to then fill out the information what they accepted and how much it was, so that we can investigate. So actually, the ethics panel is responsible for then following up and investigating that. So this is the first year that actually our office did a lengthy, a lot of work to be able to set it up so that we could make sure that everyone was in compliance as far as completing their financial disclosure forms. So anyone that, teachers get gifts all the time from their students. So we're not talking about that, but we're talking about our, say, principals who get gifts from different vendors and they've gone way beyond the $20. And, part of it is just to attract the school to continue to do business with that particular vendor, that kind of thing. And that's why we require, and so they are aware of it because we are, this past year especially, and we're going to continue this every year, is to stay on top of all the financial disclosure forms so that everyone that is required to complete them does complete them. And it's broad, it goes beyond the executive level staff. Anyone that's in a position where they could accept a gift that could influence any of their decisions really are the people that receive it.
Thank you. Board Member Boozer Struther, has your concern been addressed?
Yeah, it addresses my question.
Okay, move up. Okay, try it again. You broke up a little bit.
Sorry about that. I
Now,
guess I just want to make sure that the vendors also are informed to not give gifts over $20 to our employees.
oh, okay. So Ms. Welsh, what do you think?
So that would be something I would need to talk to our purchasing office, because I'm not sure how they interact with the vendors, but I could certainly bring it up and have a conversation with them.
Ms. Struthers, is that sufficient?
Yeah, thank you. I just
And move over a little bit.
get in trouble over
There
a
you go.
vendor, giving a nice item.
Okay. All right, thank you. Mr. Whitley, you
Yes.
wanted to comment.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Welsh, with reference to going back to Section 3, letter C, number 16, would it be possible to add some language after to outside parties, including but not limited to information obtained during executive sessions.
Yes, would you repeat that for me again, including?
Including but not limited to information, you can put confidential or proprietary information obtained during executive sessions.
Okay,
Would that satisfy your request, Board Member Williams?
Yes, I think executive session, I think that's a great add because it's very clear. But I'm also thinking about something that would say, I think that covers it. I think it covers it. Confidential and proprietary information included but not limited to information received during executive session. I think that covers it. Yeah, I think it does.
Okay, thank you, Board Member Williams. Thank you, Mr. Whitley. Mr. Whitley, do you have anything else to add?
Nope, that's it.
Okay, now, do I need a new motion or do I need something added to the motion? Or,
Well, if it makes you comfortable, I can't remember if Board Member Boozer Strother or I made the motion because we both sort of spoke at the same time.
right,
If we just amend the motion to say as amended.
okay, thank you. So, so there's a motion on the floor. We've revised the motion, and I hope I'm doing this right. Policy 0108, the motion is,
The
the
motion is to
policy is to
amend.
forward the revised policy 0108, financial impropriety, improper conduct, and whistleblower protection with amendments to the full board to seek public comment. Did I get it?
Perfect.
And I'd say out of an abundance of caution, maybe we have a second.
May I have a second?
Second,
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
Madam Chair, may I interrupt to ask, just to make
Yes.
sure for the minutes that we can accurately record what the amendments are? I have Mr. Whitley's addition, and I know where that goes. The other amendment is the addition of other policies as are located by Robin at the end of the policy. Have I got that correct?
Yeah,
Yes,
adding some references. Yes.
yes.
Added
And
references.
Mr. And Mr. Newsom, may I suggest that the tape can be played back for staff to capture specifics
Mhm.
for the minute.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm sorry to interrupt. I just want to
No,
make
that's
that.
okay. This is fine. This is good. This is good. Appreciate it. So hearing, is there any other additional discussion, comments? Hearing none, the chair calls for the vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes. Thank you. 4.2, policy 3500, naming of schools, school district facilities, dedicating areas of school and school district facilities or grounds, and erecting monuments. I will now yield the floor to Ms. Welsh to give us an overview of revised policy 3500.
Okay, so policy 3500 was revised. I'll tell you the main purpose in the revisions. One was to reorganize it a little bit to help it be a little bit more clear to understand the process, and I'll explain those changes in a minute. And then more specifically, to be clear about if we're naming a school or a school facility or a component of a school or a school facility, or if we're erecting a monument, are we naming it after a deceased person or are we naming it after someone who is living? And then if they are living and their employees, they have been an employee that they have not been in service for the past 3 years. They have not worked for the system for 3 years. so that they separated from employment. So basically, the policy, if you go to the policy statement, I will say that I did make a little bit of change in there, and it was really to sort of reflect some of the language in the strategic plan, so that we are, because the focus on the strategic plan has a lot to do with equity, of course, and cultural and community influences for equity, as well as a culturally responsive district. And so I incorporated some of that language into our policy, because that's who we would like to, if we're naming after a person, it would be someone who has influence on either the school or students that presents these kinds of things, that moves us forward in what our goals are as a school system. And then I have definitions, just two definitions. One talks a little bit more specific about components of school and school districts. So we know our school district facilities. So we know that we're talking about things like, it could be like a media center, or maybe an athletic field, or I don't know, a lot of times a gym they want to name, or a library, those kinds of things. So that's one piece of it. And then the other thing was making sure we understand what a school district facility is. And I basically gave examples like Oxon Hill Developmental Center, or Development Center, Bonnie F. Johns Educational Media Center. And that's really purely for clarity. So the current policy sort of mixed together the whole committee piece of it, and then how we're going to name the schools all sort of together. And then it would keep referencing, go back and look at this, because that's how the committee operated. So what I did was pull out all the committee stuff and put that up front, so that we know what the committees look like if we're naming new schools, consolidated schools, or existing schools. And then if we're naming a school district facility and grounds, and then if we're naming components of schools or school district facilities and monuments, so that we're clear about who's going to be on these committees when we're naming. And then the next thing is to go into the actual renaming process. And of course, any of the people that we are looking at, if they're deceased, then we're looking at anyone who has historically has had a positive influence when we're looking at cultural diversity and equity. And then we also, there's times when we do name buildings after like geographic locations or features of the area. So that could be, or specific to stated goals of the school. So I listed those things out, but it does say that the person for naming of a school, consolidated school, or existing school must be deceased. And then when we get to related to school district facilities and grounds, the same thing, it's the same idea of how we're, coming up with the names, but also again, that this person would be deceased at this point in time. And then when we get to the components of schools and school district facilities and monuments, then it goes to living or deceased. And so it could be someone who's alive, and they have made contributions. A lot of times people want to name, let's say, a gym after an employee, like say a coach who was outstanding or something. And so they want to, they do want to use school system employees, but there is a section, and this was here previously, but it talks about what are the limitations on naming. And it does say that if we're naming it after someone who is currently alive and has been a school system employee, they have to have been separated from employment for at least 3 years. So those are the main things. There is another piece that's been added, and that was added also in the administrative procedure. It has to do with plaques for new school buildings and school district facilities, that the new school building or facility will be adorned with a permanent plaque in the front interior of the building with the names of the Board of Education members and the CEO that were in the office during the final approval process to build the new school and or facility. And that's a new piece that was not there previously. So that's basically it. I know that Dr. Golson sometimes gets requests to name buildings after people who are still working in the system. And she asked me to actually research some of the other school systems policies on how they do that. And basically how this policy is set up right now is reflective of what some of the other major school systems do.
Okay, Ms. Welsh, does that complete your presentation?
It does.
Thank you. Colleagues, may I have a motion? Before we have a discussion, may I have a motion to forward revised policy 3500, naming of schools, school district facilities, dedicating areas of school and school district facilities or grounds, and erecting monuments, with a recommendation to the full board to seek public comments. Pamela, Board Member Pamela Boozer Strother.
So moved.
Second,
Thank you. It has been moved and seconded. Now we can have a discussion. Board Member, the chair recognizes Board Member Pamela Boozer Struthers. Hey, can you hear me?
And so, can you hear me okay?
Yes, don't move.
Okay, great. I just wanted, I have a couple questions. So the first one I want to ask is, I just want clarity on, are we now saying building new schools, consolidated schools, existing schools, B1 can only be named deceased?
Correct.
You broke up a little bit, Board Member Boozer Struthers, so move up a little bit and try it again.
I just want to clarify on B1A that we only deceased historical figure can be used in a name. Like no, are we saying that no school should ever be named after someone living? Can you just parse that out one more time?
So for actual, the entire, like a new school or consolidated school or existing schools or school district facilities and grounds are being named after deceased individuals. And then anything that is a component of a school district or a school building or a school district facility or erecting a monument, it can be named after a living individual.
All right, so what you're saying is that is correct. Like from this point forward, no living people can be suggested for names of schools.
That is correct.
Okay, all right. That's this is going to public comment. The other is that it was my understanding, and Dr. Goldson had said this to the board at some point, because we had noted that our renaming commission had paused its work, and she referenced that the county's commission, which was called the Responsible Legacy Force, she was waiting on their criteria for naming and renaming of buildings in the county, which would include PGCPS. It's not clear to me that guidance has been transferred into this that I see on what the Responsible Legacy Task Force finalized, and I'm presuming their work is finalized. Do you have any information on that, if it was referenced in your editing?
That I would have to research for you. I don't know anything about that, so I would have to find that out for you.
Okay, I appreciate that. I think it's also something relevant for the public comment time period. So I'm comfortable with where we are in moving this to public comment.
Okay, good, thank you. Have you completed your comments, Board Member Boozer Strother?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. The chair now recognizes Board Member Sonia Williams.
thank you, Madam Chair. My question is along the same line as Board Member Boozer Strother, except it relates to naming portions of the building, the components of the building.
Okay.
And the reference where it speaks to a living individual and the timing in which they have to be separated from the school system. And my only thought around that is when it comes to facilities that may be named for an exemplary employee who continues to reside continues to be employed by the school system. And one example is one of my schools is getting a new football field, and our football team has gone to the state almost every year since I've been a board member under a specific coach. And there may be an opportunity to recognize that coach who continues to work for the school system. And that in my mind is something that is, very extraordinary to take a school to the state championship or at least be in the playoffs every year. And so there may be a desire to name that football field after that coach. And then if we have a science wing where we are now getting into the competition stage for some of our STEM work, including robotics. And I believe we have now one of those, I can't remember what, droids that, there are these competitions that our science guys are getting into regularly. And if we have a great science teacher, we may want to, name a wing of the school after that employee if they are still employed. So I'm just a little concerned about the 3-year separation period, and if that's necessary. Would you just take that back for reconsideration, and see what kind of feedback you get from some of your colleagues in the legal department?
Yes, I would be glad to. I will share with you that Dr. Golson's has a concern about using current employees and their names. And one of the reasons, first of all, is that once you start naming one person for this, then you might be constantly, people might, well, why didn't you name me after this or that? And then having to deal with that constant people wanting to be named after certain things.
Yeah.
And secondly, the other issue is that, and I hate to say it, but there are times when we've had employees who appear to be very outstanding, have done exemplary things, and come to find out that down the road that something happens that clearly was not exemplary, and we really didn't want to have, knowing what they had done or had been doing or whatever, we really don't want to be naming them after that.
Absolutely. I completely understand. And so, I mean, I understand that background for a time frame. And so if we do have a time frame of separation, let's just look at the 3-year period. And this just so happens to fall in when I'm looking at some of the football fields that are being built, with the new turf fields and all that. Wise is another school that comes to mind that has done amazing things in their athletics. So just something, I mean, if we have to have a number, I'm fine with it, but I just would like to have some, maybe we do without it or we make it a year or something like that. But I just wanted to bring up that concern.
I will double check the other policies just from other counties to see if they actually limit the number of years, say how many. And I will also follow up with Dr. Golson about it. And I think her biggest concern is that they're not currently employed. So I will follow up with her about the number.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Board Member Williams, are you comfortable with the policy moving forward to public comment while the
Absolutely.
research? Okay. Mr. Whitley, did you have any input?
Just one comment. I live in the northern part of the county out in Laurel, but it's my understanding that there's a school that was recently named after former President Barack Obama in the county. If this policy was in place, that would not have been able to happen. So that's just, something for consideration, Ms. Welsh.
Okay.
So I don't know if we want to maybe carve out an exception where the board can, if extraordinary circumstances present themselves and the board wants to, acknowledge someone who's still living, maybe there's some type of carve out or something.
Okay.
Okay, this was very good input. So to my colleagues, are we still moving forward with the motion for public comment while Ms. Welsh goes and do further research on the issues that have been raised around the timeline of when people living can be nominated? I can't see you, Pam. Can you speak?
Uh, I would like to say yes, because I think there's a lot of opinions on this, and I would really like to get this into the public sphere as quickly as possible and get a lot of those opinions collected, in addition to what we've asked around the county's responsible legacy task force and the issue of living, who might qualify as a living person nominate to have a school name. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to everyone. This was a great discussion. So hearing no further discussion, are we ready for the chair calls for the vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes. Thank you, guys. That was really good. 4.3, policy
Madam
5113.
Chair,
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, ma'am.
we have one more policy that we're reviewing for public comment. Is that right? Or
Yes,
is this?
ma'am.
Oh,
There's
okay.
one more.
I'll just
I
wait until the end, after we're done.
Okay, we have one more. 4.3, policy 5113, student attendance, absence, and truancy. I now yield the floor to Ms. Welsh to give us an overview of revised policy 5113.
Okay, policy 5113. Again, this change was driven by this past legislative session. House Bill 118 was passed, and it resulted in additional provisions to Educational Article 7-301.3. And basically, what it included was that treating an absence that's due to a student's behavioral health needs the same as an absence due to an illness or another somatic health needs. And then that including an appropriate licensed or certified healthcare provider shall provide the note of to excuse the absence. And then the last provision in the law that was required is that if the student's absence is due to behavioral health needs, then providing to the student's a parent or guardian information about the school and community behavioral health resources that are available to the student. So if we can go to the, just go through the policy, what I'd like to do is talk a minute about the definitions. So if you could go back right there. Okay. So what I did was in the lawful absences section, if you, so as it seems like every year we look at this policy. So last year we did look at this policy, and the request was that we would go ahead and include, you had asked if the board, what you included was that the board supports the CO's consideration of additional lawful absences, such like, so for example, military family absences, college visits, or a mental health day. And that's what you had in, which is the policy that's sitting there right now. So she did listen to what you had said, and in the administrative procedure, these things were added as lawful absences. So what I went ahead and did was add those particular things. So in addition to where you'll see behavioral health needs, then you see the mental health day, which we currently have implemented. That started last year, in which a student may receive an excused absence one day each semester, and they for a mental health day, and they do not need a physician's note for that day excuse for a student's absence. Then I'll go back to the newest legal requirements. They had in the AP also included a health exclusion, which included other health-related communicable and contagious diseases. So if you go down, if you scroll down, Cindy, to the end of this page, you'll see that the health right there. And that really was driven by the COVID. and how many students have been out for extended periods of time because of COVID or because of family members who had COVID and they weren't able to then come to school, those types of things. So that was incorporated into the policy. And then if you go to the next page, if you'll scroll down to page 3, you'll see that what was included was absence due to military families. For example, let's say a father is in the military and they have the opportunity, they've been away, they've been overseas or something, and they have the opportunity to come home and spend some time with their family, then that would be considered a lawful excuse if the absence of the student stayed home from school so that they could spend time with their father or mother, whoever was in the military. And then the last one had to be private career schools, and that's where students go to do college visits or go visit career schools or whatever, and that gives them the opportunity, and that's still considered a lawful absence. So she did consider all those things, and those things were incorporated into the AP. Into the AP, and now I went ahead and spelled them out in this policy for us. But also I incorporate, now this is based on the change in law where we include behavioral health needs. And it does require a licensed certified mental health practitioner certificate from the parent or guardian if the student's been continuously absent for a behavioral health need. So the question I was suspected you might have is, well, what's the difference between a mental health day and a behavioral health needs? So I actually was on the phone. I've had numerous conversations with our student services experts who deal with this and deal with MSDE. And as it turns out, many school systems have actually asked MSD, well, what's the definition of behavioral health needs? And they don't have a definition at this point in time. But what I can, so I had a lengthy conversation with our supervisor of our counselors and PPWs, and what she shared with me is that she felt like if you think about a mental health day, like say you're so overwhelmed, you just need a day to like pull yourself together, that is considered a mental health day versus, let's say, a good example might be a student who is really anxiety ridden and just is not able to come to school right now because they're so anxiety ridden, to come into even to the building is like just making them like they're just so anxious they can barely take it, and you actually do end up usually getting help from a mental health provider to help them work through that so that they can come in to school. So that is a perfect example of where you would consider a lawful absence, and then the mental health provider, mental health practitioner would provide a certificate saying I've been working with the student. So that was included into the policy, and again that's driven by the law. And then the last piece, if you go to page 4 of 5, Cindy, if you can scroll down. And what it says, so what I did was I deleted all the language where it says you're strongly supporting the CEO to consider all these lawful absences. So that's deleted because we've actually now included them, so they're there. But then the D, provision D, says that the school must provide information to the student's parent or guardian about any of the behavioral health resources that are available for the student, and that whenever the parent notifies the school that the child's absences are due to behavioral health needs. So that was incorporated. I do want to point out one other change. If you go back to page 3, if you look at, these are all new additions. So previously we had some paragraphs that talked about exceptions to the requirement to attend school. And actually it wasn't very complete. It was sort of like when the policy was written previously, it was sort of they picked and chose which ones they wanted to take out of it. And the reality is Education Article 7-301 has a list of all the exceptions to the requirements of mandatory attendance in school from 5 to age 18. So if we're going to put anything in there, as we can't just pick and choose, I think it was important then to list out what all the exceptions are. So that's why I did list them there. So that's it. I have no other comments at this point.
Thank you, Ms. Welsh. Colleagues, may I have, in order for us to have a discussion, may I have a motion to forward revised policy 5113, student attendance, absence, and truancy, with a recommendation to the full board to seek public comment?
So moved.
Thank you. It has been moved
Second.
and seconded. The floor is now open for discussion and comment regarding revised policy 5113. Board member, the chair recognizes board member Pamela Boozer Struther.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to see those changes from our Policy and Governance Committee meetings back in October, November 2020 moved into the language of the policy. So I want to thank Dr. Goldstein for that. There's one phrase that I think is kind of missing from our what we did in 2020, and I'm looking at the November 4th, 2020 memo to the board. We had discussed to create a category for broader definition of family that would include extended family, relatives, and close non-relatives whose death would permit students to be lawfully excused from school. Can you tell me if that is codified, or do we need to be more specific about this broader definition of family that the board had moved forward to Dr. Goldson? And I believe at the time, there may have been some language around that. So I'm just making sure I'm tracking all the changes over these couple revisions that we've had to do.
As far as the policy, I'm not sure, but what I would like to do is just quickly pull up the AP and just see if the language got expanded in the administrative procedure for it. Because that might be where it might be sitting right now. And if not, I certainly, that's something we could probably incorporate.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because I do recall that we had it moved all under the superintendent, CEO can extend all of and everything you've talked about, the mental health days, the recognition of time off for military family visits, and this definition of family. We're all in that same revision cycle, but I do recall the procedure was utilized to make this more specific. So I appreciate you looking into it.
I can tell you in just a minute. So this is what they wrote in the administrative procedure: death in the immediate family, and then they have in friends, that is parent, guardian, brother, sister, grandparent, and I'm taking friends away. Then it says, or extended family and close non-relatives.
That's it. Yeah, that's exactly what was written in our memo as we went through this. So thank you for confirming.
Yeah, so it's there. It says that 4 school days shall be considered excused for immediate family, extended family, and close non-relative, and that the principal may grant extra days for extenuating circumstances.
Right. So much. That concludes my questions and comments.
Thank you, board member Boozer Struthers. The chair recognizes board member Sonia Williams.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Welsh, I have a question around just the number of days that a student could potentially be out of class and how we handle that. If we are allowing a student to take one mental health day a quarter, that's 4 days, and then we have, if they have COVID, that could be another 5 days. We're reaching that mark of the 10 days of being out of the classroom. Although they're excused from being in the school system, should there be something in the policy, or is there something in the procedure that discusses how classwork and assignments should be handled to ensure that that student is getting the education that is needed, especially if we're talking, COVID, or even mental health days, military families, a pregnant mother. I could see this being a lot of days of excused absences, if someone has an extraordinary year. but how do we relate this to the class assignments, their grades, and what it looks like on their record?
Let's see. So I'm just looking at the AP, and they talk about that any student who is lawfully absent will have the opportunity to make up all missed assignments. The teachers are required to provide makeup work within 48 hours when requested for students who are lawfully absent, including including suspensions. And then those students who have been out because they didn't qualify for home and hospital teaching, but they still were out because of some illness. Let's see, lawfully may not be it says students who are lawfully absent may not be penalized for work requested but not provided by the school for periods of such lawful absence. The number of days allowed to make up missed work will be equivalent to the number of days of the number of days of lawful absences. The timeline will begin when the teacher provides the student with the assignments within 48 hours of requests.
Okay, I think that covers it. I really wanted to understand what that exchange in teaching and the students showing that they have actually received the instruction and demonstrate that they know the work. So I appreciate that. So it doesn't matter if they're out 10 days, they have 10 days to get the work back. There's
Right.
still just a small gap as to if they're out for 10 days, how are they getting that instruction? Are we able to use some type of recording? Or, because just giving a student an assignment, that's putting it in their hands. But if they are learning a new concept, how are we ensuring that they're getting the instruction? So I don't know if it would probably be in the administrative procedure as to what the teacher is responsible for doing and to ensure that that student receives the instruction, especially when it comes to new concepts that are being taught in the classroom. So just food for thought. And I think that I appreciate that information is in the procedure for how long they have to get the work done. But if I just see that there's a small gap around instruction that we could be missing out. So just food for thought.
And I will I will also check with student services because I'm just quickly going through the AP, so I might be missing it. But that's a very good question. So I will ask if they have considered that, or they might have things in already in place that they do to support students. So I will follow up with that and find that out for you.
Okay, thank you. But I'm good with this moving forward, this AP moving forward.
Thank you, Board Member Sonia Williams. Is there any further discussion or comment? Hearing none, the chair calls for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes. Board Member Sonia Williams, you wanted to make a comment. Do you want to make it here?
Oh,
Or do you
yeah,
want it to wait for later?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to understand, because I'm new to the policy committee, what happens if there are an extraordinary number of comments that come back after it goes to public comment? Do we sort of pause it and go through the comments and then, bring it back to the board once all the changes have been made? I mean, not the board, the committee with the changes that have been made, and then we do this process again, sending it out to the public again? What is that process like?
Ms. Welsh, please.
So generally speaking, one of the staff in the board office will take down all the comments, so we have them all in one place and review them. And the last time I went over them and pulled out anything, many of them were things like, yay, this is great, that type of thing. But there were a couple, if I recall, that were very specific to the content of a policy, and they were asking some very specific questions, and which caused me to have to do some research, both from a legal perspective and then also just from how the practice of the system. So then we, as a committee, you all discussed it. And I remember one of the ones had to do with the parenting and pregnant and parenting students. And one of the public comments had to do with why are we having a lactation room for high school students, but we're not going to have any of those available in the middle school. And in fact, I think it was you that asked the question, well, couldn't we have it in the middle school? And yes, we could have it in the middle school. And actually, we did revise that policy to include it in the middle school also. It was just that when the law came out, it specifically had said high school, but you certainly could go beyond the law and include it in the middle school. So it is and if you look at your bylaw 9340, it actually talks about reviewing the public comments. And then if you have to make any revisions, then the committee gets the policy to where they're pleased with it and they want to recommend to the full board that it needs to be now moved forward so it can be approved.
Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you, Ms. Welsh. 5.0 follow-ups and next steps. 5.1 follow-ups. Follow-ups from previous meetings will be posted on board docs upon receipt. 5.2 next steps. The next Policy and Governance Committee meeting will be held on Tuesday, September 13th, 2022 at 5 p.m. virtually. Please check the board page on the PGCPS website for more information. 6.0, closing remarks from the chair and adjournment. I appreciate all of the discussion and the comments tonight. Ms. Welsh, thank you for providing the in-depth, as my fellow board member, Ms. Sonia Williams said, information tonight with those changes. For me,
Thank you.
it brought clarity, and I appreciate that, and I hope the community appreciates that as well. And for Mr. Joe Day, thank you to yourself, Miss Cindy Adeline, and Mia Barton for ensuring that we had a great meeting tonight. The logistics was great, everything worked, and I appreciate it. So thank you, ladies, and Mr. Joe Day, thank you for your staff. Mr. Whitley, appreciate your input tonight. It helps, it brings clarity, and it helps to move us as a board closer to doing very self-governance. So I appreciate you recognizing that, and I appreciate your input into these policies and helping us to look forward to how we will align them. So for all of you, I thank you. Are there any more comments from anybody before I ask for a motion to adjourn? No? Okay. So may I have a
Pam
motion?
Boothers has her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, Pam.
That's all right.
Board member.
I did have my hand up a little earlier. I don't think you saw it, that I
Oh,
did
I'm
want to
sorry, I didn't.
expand upon for board member Williams, Vice Chair Williams, that the board also can vote to send this back to us for more work before it goes to public comment.
That's true.
You may recall
That's
the
true.
foreign policy. That took a very long time because it came back to us at least once, if not twice, to work on again. Then it made it to public comment. Public had quite a bit to say about it. Revisions were made, and it, we had to go through quite a process. So some of these policies tonight could may require that elongated interaction with the policy. Because when you look at, say, the renaming of buildings, naming of buildings, it's been a very long time since this has been in front of the public. And a lot has shifted in the thinking on this. So we also, as a committee, need to be patient with the potential way this goes. So I just wanted to raise that sometimes policies move really quickly and sometimes they require a lot of back and forth with the constituents. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Pamela Boozer Struthers. One of the things that I always say is doing the work of the board requires patience. So we want to get it right. And as long as we get it right, I think the community will appreciate our efforts, even if we have to revisit policy, bring it back to the committee and take it back to the full board. So I appreciate that. Any more comments from anybody? I can see everybody now. Any more comments? If not, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. I move that we adjourn.
And I'll second that. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, guys. Until next time, enjoy your evening. I appreciate you all. Thank you. Good night.
Everyone take care.